we're getting toward the very shaky ground of the top and the fall from it. Historically,
do you think we're near a top?
I think so. I mean, historically, this is usually the time when we get the top, between 1 year and 18 months after the halving.
So great to see you. This is our first in-person interview. I can't believe it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Natalie. Always a pleasure to be talking to you.
It's been a while. You've been busy writing another book, so I want to talk to you about the gold standard. But first, how are you finding this conference this year? Because you've been to what, 4 or 5 of them?
I think this is my 3rd or 4th. I've lost count. Honestly, they're all such a big whirlwind of events going on. They all blend into one big giant days of Bitcoin awesomeness.
Yeah. So tell me about this book, because you have Bitcoin Standard, then Fiat Standard. You have now other authors under your umbrella. You had Principles of Economics, which was amazing, and now the Gold Standard. You're going deep. I mean, what have you not written about that you really wanted to dive into with this?
Well, exactly. So I've covered the real world, so I had to invent a fake world to write about it now because there's nothing left to write about the real world, I guess. No, it's not true. Obviously, there's more to write about the real world. But I'd always wondered about what the world would have looked like without fiat money. Once you take the fiat pill and you start thinking about fiat and how fiat affects everything, it's really one of the most disconcerting realizations of just how much damage it has done to our world and how different our world would be without it. And once you start thinking about that, it's just almost consuming. You keep thinking about what this means and what the implications are. And frankly, the implications are enormous. So I've always had this idea in my mind of trying to think about what the world would have looked like without fiat. And because, in economics, a big part of economics is to think about the counterfactual. When you're making a choice in economics and human action, you don't get to do a choice in a lab setting in isolation. Everything has an opportunity cost. Time is ticking. Life is irreversible, and time just keeps moving on. And so therefore, you're always thinking about what might have been, what could have been, and you need to always think about it. And once you start conceptualizing the concept of opportunity cost and what could have been and the alternatives in your mind, that's when you start thinking properly in the economic sense. And so thinking about the question of fiat from that perspective inevitably leads you to think about what the world could have looked like.
So it's a hypothetical
Yes,
book?
It's a fiction book.
It's a fiction book. Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. I thought you were like digging deep on the gold standard with stuff that you haven't uncovered before.
No, I thought about doing that. I mean, initially that was the kind of natural consequence because I wrote Bitcoin Fiat, so you would have gone back, wrote and written about the history of gold as money and how the gold standard functioned and so on. But honestly, there are a lot of books written on gold, and I don't really particularly have much to add, particularly as it's kind of a dead technology at this point. It's been out of commission for a while, and a lot has been written already about it. But what I did have in mind was the idea for the counterfactual, and I started working on the counterfactual, and then it occurred to me that okay, I should just name it the gold standard and then complete the trilogy.
Interesting. Okay, but I mean, you say it's a dead technology, but central banks have been buying up gold. Gold is in the headlines every single day. Some people are talking about the U.S. potentially moving back to a neutral reserve asset being gold.
Yeah.
Not Bitcoin yet. What do you think about all of that and how the monetary system in real time is actually changing?
I doubt it. I doubt that we're going to get a move to gold. I think governments just don't like gold. They're heavily propagandized against gold, and they heavily propagandize their populations against gold. So, I mean, yeah, it would be obviously an improvement over the dollar if we were to have a truly neutral international monetary system that could not be produced by any one particular government. But it doesn't look like it's happening. And all these BRICS countries, they keep talking about it, or they keep making noises about it. Or really, it's mostly Westerners who, gold bugs, who just keep projecting their dreams and wishes upon the BRICS and just imagining that they're going to pull this off. But they are not going to pull it off. The dollar is the biggest, most liquid market. It's the easiest one to use. And you don't have a liquid market infrastructure. You don't have market infrastructure to make gold liquid on an international scale. That's what's ultimately missing. So there isn't a market for the clearance of gold. And that's a practical thing that needs to be built. And it's not something that you can just mandate with a press release. You want to have a very fluid, smooth, functional, cheap, reliable mechanism for moving gold from one country to the other. And these countries need to be building these systems. And they can be built easily, and they can be built cheaply, but they're not building them. So I don't think it's happening. And I think if they start thinking about building them practically, if they start really thinking about gold in a practical sense, all that's going to happen is they're going to then truly understand the value of Bitcoin.
Next up, a quick word about my friends at Bitwise. They've been educating investors on Bitcoin for more than 7 years, have over $10 billion in client assets, and a team of 100 plus. Their weekly newsletter is a must read. It's written by their CIO, Matt Hogan, one of the best minds in the business. I highly recommend it. It's witty, bold, and quick. Takes just 5 minutes to read each week. So head over to bitwiseinvestments.com/CIO memo. And always, of course, carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto. Coin Stories is also brought to you by Bitdeer, a global leader in disruptive technology for Bitcoin mining and high-performance computing for AI. Bitdeer trades under the stock ticker BTDR and boasts a massive 2.5 gigawatts of electrical capacity across 3 continents, positioning Bitdeer as one of the most diversified and power-dense computing companies in the world. Learn more at bitdeer.com. So you don't think that they could potentially revalue the gold that the U.S. currently has to today's market prices to maybe do an accounting trick essentially to address the deficit, or no?
No, it doesn't make the difference. I mean, the items on the asset side of the U.S. government balance sheet are essentially worthless. It doesn't matter how much assets they have. They just have a money printer, and that's the only asset they need. So it doesn't matter. They can value the gold or the Bitcoin at $1 each or $1 trillion each. It's all it's all baloney on their balance sheet. Ultimately, they've got the money printer, and as long as the money printer works, then they don't need assets.
What is the biggest headwind facing Bitcoin right now? Because we do have a lot of positive momentum when it comes to the regulatory and the political forces, but we're still, I mean, some people are disappointed that we haven't hit like 200,000 and that the early majority is really not there. So what's preventing that for Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really think there is any one particular thing that stands out as a headwind, because it's hard to identify a headwind on the fastest thing that has ever existed. We've never had any financial asset move as fast as Bitcoin has. So, I think the question is, what are all the turbochargers that are pushing it so quickly? That's a more appropriate question. So, but on the other hand, you can kind of think, yeah, I mean, once you get into Bitcoin, and once you get it, there's that immediate feeling that, oh shit, this is going to do a 1,000x over the next week, because everybody's going to find out. Because if I can get it, then everybody's going to get it, and everybody's going to do it. And so that doesn't happen, Every noob comes in, they get overexcited, and then they learn to lower their time preference and start, planting the garden of the Bitcoin world that they want to see, rather than just expecting it all to materialize within a few minutes or hours or days or weeks. So if I were to think of something, I just think, sadly, people just aren't that bright. And people are heavily propagandized to believe in government as the source of money. And they're heavily propagandized to believe that government dictates what money is. And people love their chains, and people grow used to their chains, and they cannot conceive of a world without their chains. And they'd rather laugh at the person who's telling them that they could get rid of their chains than to try and actually move and realize that their chains are actually in their mind, because it's really actually very straightforward to get rid of your chains. Since Bitcoin has been invented, that's it. You've got the key. You can just unlock them and move on with your life. But
well, it's so crazy to see the complacency, even in Wall Street. I mean, this is the best performing asset of the last decade, and there are still firms that are so terrified to allocate to Bitcoin, or their charters prevent them from allocating to Bitcoin. Everyone is like terrified, looking for permission from places like Larry Fink and BlackRock. What is your take on sort of the institutionalization of Bitcoin, and do you think it's a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's no good and bad in Bitcoin. It's
inevitable.
Yeah, it's inevitable, and also it's not up to me to decide what other people do with their Bitcoin. So I can't really think of it in a sense of whether I can think of it as good or bad per se. You know, I have my own personal opinions, which is I'd rather not have Wall Street banks be buying Bitcoin as a matter of personal preference. I'd rather a lot of other people around the world manage to get all of these cheap sub 100K Bitcoins, but I can't decide who buys Bitcoin.
What do you think about the corporate treasuries? I mean, because there's so many popping up, and
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about the next bear market because I don't think that all of them can survive, and maybe some might take on too much leverage, and that could be worrisome.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all the leverage is building up just in time for the top and the bust. I mean, I just hope my message out there to everybody who's into this business is Bitcoin has done -70 and -80% before, and it can do it again. If your business model can't handle a -80% Bitcoin drawdown, rework your business model right now, because I think we're getting toward the very shaky ground of the top and the fall from it.
Do you think we're
Historically,
near a top?
I think so. I mean, historically, this is usually the time when we get the top, between 1 year and 18 months after the halving.
But
Historically,
we're actually underperforming the last halving cycles. Like we should be up higher in terms of the price.
well,
so-
yeah, if you measure from the time of the halving, but the difference is that usually the bull market would have started just before the halving, but now we had a significant bull market well before the halving. So that's why it looks like we're underperforming since the halving. But since the bottom, we were up from what was it, 15K to 109. That's not inconsiderable. 110, I think we hit is the highest. Or 111,
I think 112. Yeah.
112, yeah, I think 112 was the highest. So 115 to 15 to 112. That's sevenfold.
So you don't think we're going to like 200K this year?
No, we might, but I think there's a good chance we go over 200K. But I think we're getting to that point where it's going to be very volatile both ways. Likely, we're going to get to that that vertical side, that vertical part of the curve where it goes up
The
a lot.
blow-off top
Yes,
kind
the
of
blow
thing?
off top, where
We
it
never
goes
really
up a
got
lot
that.
and then it crashes.
I mean,
Yeah, we didn't get it last time because we kind of had two, and then there
Yeah.
was the China minor ban in the middle.
yeah.
But realistically, still, it was 12 to 18 months after the halving where the top happened.
Interesting. Well,
So-
what about the macro side? I mean, don't you think there's like a big print that's incoming because there's going to be enough tremors in the financial markets and the treasury market that they're going to have to come in and liquefy, and that's going to be great for Bitcoin?
Maybe. But people have been saying that for a very long time. People have been expecting that for a long time. It may happen, but ultimately, I generally still fall back on my thesis that Bitcoin marches to its own drumbeat. And yes, I think the liquidity stuff matters a lot, but it matters a lot more in the short term. And I guess it matters in kind of also in terms of drawing the long-term magnitudes. Probably it matters, but I think ultimately it marches to its own drumbeat.
So you obviously wrote the Bitcoin Standard. Safeideen, you know that book really changed my life. It has changed the lives of a lot of people. A lot of them came here to see you, thank you, get you to sign the book. You've sold 1 million copies, right? I mean, that's quite an accomplishment because you're self-published. You were basically the first big Bitcoin book out there. What does it feel like to have sold 1 million copies around the world? That's incredible.
Yeah, it feels great. Definitely not what I had expected. I was writing a book about Bitcoin because I felt I needed to write it, because otherwise I was just arguing with people on Facebook all the time, and because I needed to keep my job as an academic. And it definitely blew up far further than I expected.
How are we going to get the early majority really onboarded?
I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start working on a curriculum for children, for school children.
Oh, that's great.
I'm gonna work on a Bitcoin guide, similar to the Bitcoin Standard, but simplified, so that a 14, 12-year-old can read it and enjoy it and learn the most important ideas from it.
And learn
So
money.
maybe that would- yeah.
Learn money in Bitcoin. That's so
Yes.
needed. Yeah.
I think it is needed, and I think the Bitcoin Standard is a little too heavy for I mean, I know some 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds who have read it, but I think
Yeah.
for the average 12-year-old, it's probably a little too heavy. And also, a little too elaborate. They don't need to know a lot about the details,
For sure.
and they just need to know the key and important ideas and how they apply in their life.
This episode is brought to you by Casa, the leader in Bitcoin self-custody solutions, helping people like me secure their wealth with simple, powerful, multi-key vaults. And now Casa is here to help businesses and even governments do the same. Introducing Casa Business, a secure, easy-to-use 3-key vault designed for small and large businesses with team signing capabilities and a web dashboard. Start your Bitcoin treasury the secure way and protect your assets. Get 10% off your Casa plan at casa.io/Natalie. Up next, BitKey. BitKey is a Bitcoin hardware wallet with multi-sig security, inheritance, and a recovery system designed for real life. No complex setup, no seed phrase, just true self-custody without the stress. It was named one of Time's best inventions in 2024. Use code STORIES for 20% off at bitkey.world. Next up, the Bitcoin way. Bitcoin is only freedom money if you control it fully. The Bitcoin Way can help you learn the skills to properly secure your Bitcoin in 100% self-custody with zero counterparty risk. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Natalie to speak one-on-one with the best experts. Your security and sovereignty are priceless, so don't gamble with your future and peace of mind. Protect your Bitcoin like a pro. CoinKite, the one-stop shop for all your Bitcoin cold storage needs. Their flagship cold card wallet is ultra secure, open source, and beginner friendly. Visit their site, grab 5% off with promo code CoinStories. Want to reach millions of Bitcoin users? Speed Wallet makes it easy. Launch your app on Speed's mini app store. Publish your app in hours, no coding needed. You can also accept Bitcoin payments effortlessly with Speed. Ready to grow? Publish on Speed today. Visit speed.app.
You've been in this space for so long now. Can you just share kind of how you've seen the evolution of the Bitcoin culture, the ecosystem? I mean, now we're embraced by the White House. We're at this conference with 30,000 people. I mean, what's it been like to see the growth?
It's been surreal. I mean, I think I did not expect governments and corporations to come in so early. I would have expected if you were to ask me to say 7, 8, 9 years ago what I would expect for the year 2025, I would say I probably would have expected a lot more broad grassroots adoption, more and more random normal people in the US and Venezuela and Lebanon and China and Germany and all over the world buying small amounts of Bitcoin and stacking over time, and not enough or not a lot of banks, finance, Wall Street, these things. I would have expected it to be that way, but it seems to have gone the other way. We're getting the concentrated adoption where large money is buying in quantities. People like Saylor, corporations, banks, BlackRock. It's really wild.
Do you think that wealth concentration will decrease under a Bitcoin standard?
It's a difficult
obviously
question.
There's always inequality, but do you think it's going to be as concentrated in terms of wealth as it is today? Because really, we don't have a meritocracy, right? Like, it's all flown to people closest to the issuers. Could that change?
Well, the thing is, I think the term inequality, mathematically, there are many different ways of measuring it. And I don't think any of them is valid in a sense because, you can use the Gini coefficient. You can say measure the ratio between the top 10% and the bottom 10%. Each one of them gives a different emphasis to the question, but there's no correct way of analyzing the question or objective way of analyzing the question because it's just, it plays out in many different ways that can have very different implications in many different ways. And so it's not obvious which one would be the best measure for this. But in a sense, I don't honestly think it matters. So the question of will Bitcoin be more unequal or not, it's difficult to answer it because it could be more unequal in the sense that there's a small little 0.1% who control an enormous chunk of the Bitcoin. But outside of that 0.1%, the rest of society might be more similar and or less unequal, let's say, of a similar income profile, better than in fiat. So which one is more unequal in this regard? If you just ignore the 0.1%, if you include it, So it's difficult to estimate something like this. It's difficult to predict it. But even if we were able to predict it, it's difficult to compare those two different distributions of income to be able to come up with which one would be more equal or unequal. And for me, ultimately, it doesn't really matter because I don't think this is an interesting question. Intellectually, politically, or morally, I don't think this is a good thing for anybody to be doing. Just trying to think about how much money they have compared to other people. And, I think it's something that you see in children, and it's something that well-raised children are raised to stop doing. At a certain point, sometime when you're between 7 and 14, I would imagine, is the time when you need to be taught to stop comparing yourself to others, stop fixating on the toys that other kids have, focus on your own toys, focus on enjoying yourself with your own toys. And if you learn that, then it doesn't matter what toys you have, you will be happy.
That's an interesting
And if you
way to
don't
put it.
learn that, it doesn't matter how many toys you have, you will be unhappy. You will always be looking at the other kid who has the toy that you don't have. And no matter how much your parents buy you toys, if you keep looking at other toys, there will always be kids with toys that you don't have. And so you'll always be miserable. On the other hand, if you are happy with what you have, if you're able to focus on what you have and making the most of what you have, you could get an empty box and you'll be very happy with all the toys that you can make out of it.
That's an interesting way to put it. Okay. One of the things I'm grateful to you for teaching me is actually the fact that we don't need an inflationary monetary supply, that really any amount of money will do as long as it's divisible. Can you touch on that just a little bit? Because I even recently had Judy Shelton on the show, and one of the things that was hard for her about Bitcoin is that absolute finite scarcity. And she kind of compared it to dividing was like issuing more shares of stock, and I was like, no, because you're not diluting anyone, you're just dividing, right? And then some people came back to me and said, no, Bitcoin's not infinitely divisible. And I was assuming on secondary layers it actually is. That's what I've read. So can you comment a little bit about that? Like, why is a finite, scarce amount of money good for society? And is Bitcoin infinitely divisible? Can it meet all the needs of society no matter how large the economy grows?
So the first question really is the most important question in economics, I would say. And it was really the moment where it clicked for me. I would say this was the moment where Bitcoin clicked, even though Bitcoin hadn't been invented yet. But it was the moment where I became a Bitcoiner, even before Bitcoin. It was when I was reading a paper by Mario Rothbard called The Austrian Theory of Money. It's a short paper, something like 20, 30 pages or so. But it really might be the best summary of money from Austrian economics perspective, which for me is basically the best treatment of money, full stop. So it's a great, great article. And he goes over the main ideas in Mises and in the Austrian tradition. And he concludes with saying, any supply of money is enough because money is acquired for its purchasing power, not its quantity, not its objective uses. So it's one thing, it's unique. Mises calls it a sui generis good. It's a good unlike others. There's no good like money. With every other good, you derive some benefit, some utility from the good itself in whichever form or shape it takes. Whereas with money, the good itself, its physical manifestation, is almost immaterial to its ability to fulfill its function. What matters is its ability to, is its purchasing power, how much you can exchange it for. So money is something that you acquire for exchange. It's a medium of exchange. You acquire it for only so that you can exchange it. So therefore, what matters is how you exchange it and how much you can exchange it for. And so therefore, you don't need to increase the quantity of money. You can just increase the purchasing power of the existing money for meeting the demand for money, for more goods, for more people. So any quantity of money can be enough because you can always just pump more purchasing power into it. That's ultimately the key idea, and that's how it fundamentally works. In that, if the demand for any good increases, the demand is increasing for the good itself, for its ability to perform its function. So if you want water, if you want a car, if you want a table, people want those tables and they need them to do those functions. But as the demand for them increases, you need to produce more. So then you need to, generate more. But with money, you don't need to generate more because all you need to do is just have the purchasing power rise. And so as the demand increases, then purchasing the market value increases, and so any quantity of demand can be met as the value of the currency appreciates over time.
Don't you need to be able to divide it too? It helps when you have 8 billion bodies around the world, right? And
Yes.
Bitcoin's fractionary, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I guess there is some kind of physical limit at a certain point that shows up when the coin, when the physical money, or where the form of money is no longer divisible in a way that is convenient for most transactions. So we saw that happen with gold. The reason that silver maintained a monetary role was because in small denominations you couldn't really cut gold into very small, fine pieces, and silver had usually a value that was about a 12th to a 15th of gold's value. So it meant that you needed a 12th of the weight, so you could make easy denominations smaller, and you could easily see them and understand what they were. But then after gold took over, part of the reason why gold was centralized was because it, for smaller denominations, you needed papers or fiat coins, essentially coins that were made out of cheap metals that were redeemable for precious metals. So essentially, part of the reason why we ended up with using money substitutes rather than money is because of the inability of gold to scale downward. You couldn't just effortlessly break a 1 ounce piece of gold into 10 ounces or 12 pieces of a 12th of an ounce, and so therefore it's less divisible. So yeah, I think with Bitcoin, this is kind of a potential hurdle problem down the road, which is at a certain point a Satoshi becomes too valuable. So currently $1 is 1,000 Satoshis. When we hit $1 million, one Satoshi will be 1 cent. So at that point, at this point, nobody really uses a cent. They're going to put cents out of a commission in the US.
Yeah, the penny.
Yeah, the penny's going to be out of use. And so by the time Bitcoin hits by the time Bitcoin hits 1 million, pennies are going to be worth less and less. So when Satoshis hit a penny, there's still it's not going to be a problem. But when Satoshis hit a dime, maybe by the time they hit a dime, even that won't be a problem. But maybe when a Satoshi hits $1, then yeah, that's going to be a problem at that point. So then, I've heard different things from different people, so I don't really know. Some people say it's something that can be implemented on chain. It can be revised. Others say it can be implemented on second layer solutions that you can
that's what I've read.
add basically a decimal point and start adding more zeros. I do not know, but by the time we get to one Satoshi is $1, I'm gonna be ready to confront such a question.
All right, my last question for you is, what is maybe a dream that Bitcoin has allowed you to have come true?
Well, I mean, the most important dream obviously is my family. Having the ability to take care of my family and provide for them, and to work my job as a writer, writing things that I want, teaching things that I like, and also provide for my family, doing the things that I love to do, and things that I think are valued by others. I think it's just a blessing that I'm extremely grateful for on every day. And something that I don't take for granted. I think it's a true blessing.
Well, we're blessed to have your mind in this space. Thank you so much, Saif. I'm glad we got to do this.
We're blessed
person.
to have you, Natalie. Thank you so much.
And I'm going to get myself a copy of the Gold Standard. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you don't miss any new episodes. If you can, turn on those notifications and leave us a positive review. They really help the show grow organically with new listeners. We have a free weekly newsletter. Sign up at thenewsblock.substack.com. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Nothing should constitute as official investment advice, and you should always do your own research. I'm always open to feedback and guest suggestions, so please feel free to reach out at info@talkingbitcoin.com. I'll see you next time.